All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the webinar today. Today we're going to be talking about AWS Observability. My name is Katie Gray. I'm a product marketing manager here at Sumo Logic, where I focus on operation intelligence. So Kubernetes, AWS Observability, our entire suite of observability product line. So today, obviously, we're going to be focusing on this particular solution. So here's the agenda of what we're going to be covering today. I'm going to do a couple seconds on what is Sumo Logic for those of you who aren't familiar. Then I'm going to do an overview of the AWS Observability solution. And then we're going to spend the majority of our time going into the live demo and the product. So I'll be showing you a couple of use cases, a couple examples of how you can use a solution to troubleshoot and monitor your environment in real time. And then we'll talk about a couple use cases. And then of course, I want to leave a few minutes for Q&A. So I'll be trying to answer your Q&A as I go along, but also probably the majority of it will be at the end. But feel free to just drop your questions in the chat as we're going, and I'll see if I can get to those as we're going through. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and jump in. Okay, so Sumo Logic is a continuous intelligence platform. It's one of those platforms that has many use cases. So we are a cloud native analytics platform for primarily machine data. So we ingest logs, metrics, events, and traces. We have over 2,000 customers, and we ingest about 150 plus petabytes of data on a daily basis. So quite a lot of stuff coming into our platform. We have some pretty amazing customers where we support things like the Super Bowl and other large scale solutions. So our solution from a whole, we support multi-cloud, hybrid cloud, and of course, AWS, which is what we're going to be talking about today. We have a cloud economics model to make licensing and pricing very flexible for your environment. And our solution is really built around very fast time to value. So how do we quickly get you value for the data you're ingesting? So you have a ton of out-of-box content to make that possible. So our solution has 4 primary use cases: operation intelligence, security intelligence, business intelligence, and global intelligence. So again, we can ingest data from just about anywhere. This data gets fed through the Sumo Logic platform, where we collect, visualize, and alert you on that data, and can be used across a number of different teams, and often is. So of course, we're going to be talking about the operational intelligence piece of this today. Okay, so jumping into AWS specifically, I thought it's always kind of fun to start with a little bit of stats about how we're seeing our customers actually use our product. This is from our continuous intelligence report last year. And this is about what clouds most of our Sumo customers are actually using. So primarily AWS, 64%. We have about 15% of customers using on-prem, and then 8% using other clouds. And we actually have 13% of customers using multi-cloud. So that's becoming more and more common. All of these are possible and very easy to use with Sumo Logic. And for AWS specifically, one of the things that we're seeing is actually the number of AWS services in use by customers increasing. So of course, AWS has over 150 plus, actually I think over 175 plus now services available. Across our customer base, the median is about 26 services per customer, which is pretty incredible. So one of the things that we actually built the solution to do was to provide better visibility across these services in your environments. So how do we bring all of these together and provide you visibility and help you connect the dots between these services? So one of the things that we see is that, oftentimes in your environment, you have a bunch of different AWS services. And when alerts occur, oftentimes there's alert storms where a lot of things are happening at once. How do you connect the chain of dependencies between these services and actually determine what happened first and second. And oftentimes the root cause is not the thing that's yelling the loudest. So one of the things we built the solution to do was to help quickly find that particular root cause by tracing backwards in time. So we built a solution specifically to help connect the dots between these services. So the AWS Observability solution has a couple primary functions. The first is actually bringing together data across all of these services. So we're ingesting CloudWatch and CloudTrail data across key AWS services and helping you to visualize those services in one place. We're also, we have a root cause explorer that allows us to aggregate events and show you just the most anomalous events in your environment. And we'll dive deep into the root cause explorer to show you how you can accelerate issue resolution. And the last piece here is out-of-the-box content. I mentioned one of our primary tenets is fast time to value. So we have a ton of out-of-the-box dashboards to help you quickly realize the value of the data that's coming in. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the live demo. So here I am in the Sumo Logic platform, if you've never seen it before. And I'm specifically looking at my AWS Observability Explorer tab. So here on the left, here I'm able to see actually 3 different AWS accounts. If you ever used AWS for managing data on its own, you'll often have to use a bunch of dropdowns to get aggregate information. So one of the things we're trying to do is give you high-level overview information right from the beginning. Here we have a dev account, a prod account, and a staging account. And within each of these, we can drill down into particular regions. And then within those regions, I have my AWS services broken out by different namespaces here. So as from each of these levels of the hierarchy, I'm also given overview information for this account or region or namespace. So here I'm seeing my AWS activity. I'm getting information about what's happening with the load balancer, the API gateway, EC2 and Lambda, all of this aggregate rolled up information for this region to help me get a snapshot of how my environment's doing and what's happening in my application. I can jump into a specific service like EC2, and now I'll get rolled up information about all of my EC2 instances. So I can see things like high instances with high CPU utilization or high memory utilization. And as I roll over, I can roll over the honeycomb here. I could get a snapshot of what that metric is. So like I mentioned, we're pulling in the log and metrics data across all of these services. And we're also able to tag the data as it comes in so that we can quickly pivot from metric information, like I'm looking at here, to looking at the error logs or error signatures for this particular entity. I'm also able to see recommended dashboards or jump into that particular entity drill down itself. So you'll see here, there's a bunch of EC2 instances, which might be hard to find this exact one. So I can just jump to it here. And now I'm getting summary information about this specific instance that was telling me it had high memory usage. And see, it's probably way down here. Okay, so like I said, we have a bunch of out-of-the-box content. This is the summary data. But if I wanted to look specifically at memory, I can pivot my dashboard to look at just memory for this instance as well. See if there's anything odd going on with that instance about why it might be experiencing high memory. Jumping from EC2 to Lambda. Here again, now we have specific dashboard overview information for that would be much more useful to see for Lambda. So we have top invocations. These are for today versus yesterday, top errors and top throttling events. And in this case, we're also seeing a bunch of errors, which is actually quite high for Lambda. So this might be something that I want to drill into a little bit more. You can see at the top what the top messages are for these errors. And you'll see the number of errors on the right-hand column. And one of them is this get billing info function that is producing almost 700 errors compared to the other errors that we're seeing. So this might be something that we might to drill into further. So I can go ahead and filter for just that particular entity. So my dashboard updates here. And I can get an overview of what's happening with that particular function. And I see I have a couple invoke functions and also update function configuration that occurred. So if I wanted to drill into this further, what I could do is open this up in my search. And now it's giving me information about those specific log messages. So I can pivot from the aggregates to the messages tab to look directly at those messages. And I can also see here, I can jump to that particular event name. If I want to look at just the update configuration, update function configuration messages that occurred. And from here now I can see just those messages. I can also quickly see that this user, Mark Smith, has been making some changes to this Lambda function. So I can actually now identify what happened, what exactly changed, the raw log, and I'll go talk to Mark about how to roll that back so that we don't get all of those errors happening. So really easy to drill down as you're finding and discovering issues in your environment. So at this point, I want to pivot from AWS Observability to the other aspect of the solution, which is the root cause explorer. So we actually had an incident that occurred at about 5 or 6 yesterday. And it was some 500 errors that occurred. So I'll jump over to my load balancer. And here I can see that spike, and it was indeed around 5:30. And so in order to investigate this further, I mentioned earlier, one of the things that's really useful about Sumo Logic is the ability to not just look at the errors from one service, but look at anomalies that are occurring across all of our services. So what I'll do in this case is jump from the load balancer back up to my region. And from here, I'm going to actually pivot from this region overview to my events of interest panel. And this is the first view at the root cause explorer. And what this does is it takes metrics and it analyzes them over time for seasonality, daily, weekly changes. And what we're seeing here is metrics that are behaving out of the ordinary. So in this instance, here's time on the x-axis, and the y-axis is the percent deviation from the norm. So in this case, this Lambda error is almost 200% drift above normal for this particular metric. And here is around that 5:30 timeframe I mentioned. If I want to investigate this a little bit further, I can open this up in my root cause explorer, where I have a bunch of other filters to help me drill down further. So here I am in the root cause explorer, and as I mentioned, now I'm getting overview information about the account that I'm looking at. The region has already been filtered because I jumped into this from my US East 1 region, but I can clear that if I wanted to look more broadly at multiple regions. And it's also showing me all of the different services that I'm getting anomalous events for. So I know I want to look specifically at this time range. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit more to this 5:30 time range. And now you'll see actually here a quick summary of the services that are involved now in this time frame. So I have a DynamoDB error, that ELB error that we know about, the 500 error, and also an EC2 and X-ray service errors. And one of the things that this tool helps you do is trace back in time what occurred first and second and so forth, this cascade of errors that we often see in our environments. We also find that early on in incidents, we'll see things like load or throughput errors, but later on in the incident, we'll see more serious errors like error or latency. And so these are color-coded to help you filter for those specific signals as you're tracing back a problem. So here we have this ELB error that we know about, and this is that 500 error that we saw earlier. This is about 4,000% above normal. But we want to trace this back a little bit further to kind of determine what potentially could have caused this error. Here we have a EC2 host bottleneck error. And actually, as I scroll over this, you'll see one of the other things the root cause explorer does is group similar events. So this is actually 4 different anomalous metrics that it's grouping together for us. And if I scroll back even further, I'll see the first thing that occurred here is actually a DynamoDB bottleneck event. And this is, the metric is for read throttle events. So if I scroll over metrics here, I can actually take a look at what this metric is that occurred. So the light blue is the one that we're seeing currently. And then the green is time shifted by 1 day. So this is what it would normally occur. And this is that anomalous metric. So again, one of the things that the root cause explorer takes into account is seasonality in your data. So if you have a spike every morning or every Monday, those are things that wouldn't be flagged in the root cause explorer because it's seeing those events on a recurring basis. But here I'm seeing this is definitely anomalous. So I want to drill in a little bit further to figure out what might have happened here. So I can jump into my related dashboards. Here I can jump into logs once again, or I can look at dashboards for capacity or latency. In this case, I want to take a look at events to see if anything changed in my DynamoDB settings. And maybe that could help me narrow down what might have occurred. So here's my dashboard for DynamoDB events. We have 6 errors that occurred. The top 5 events that happened, we have a describe table, create table. We actually have a couple update tables. And this is a flag for me that I might want to investigate that a little bit further. So what I'll do in this case is take a look at all table events. And I'm going to go ahead and open this in the search. And again, here I'm going to move from my aggregates to the messages. And like I did before, I'll go ahead and collapse this a bit. I can search for that event name and look at just my update table events. Okay, and here I have those 4 events that occurred. And I can see who changed these events and also who changed, who made the first change, which was Ankit here. So I can also see the raw logs of what was changed. So I can go ahead and go back and ask about this change in the read and write capacity units and go ahead and get that change fixed. Okay, so that is a high level overview of some of these features and functionality. I'm going to check if there are any questions. See, I'm not able to open up my questions. Maybe I opened it somewhere else. Okay, good question. A question about how do you view AWS observability within Sumo Logic? And so if you're using Sumo Logic, already. Get rid of some of these tabs here. So first, you'll need to install the AWS Observability app, and you can find that in the app catalog. And then I'll talk a second about how to set up collection for AWS Observability data. And again, that's just across the several different services that are available right now. And if you click New and then Explore, here we'll see Explorer by. In this environment, I have Kubernetes environment or Kubernetes data set up as well as AWS Observability. And I'll just toggle down to AWS Observability, and that's how you access it. So actually, that's a good segue to talk a little bit about how the collection works for this environment. So one of the things that we've done that makes it really easy to set up collection for AWS Observability is integrated with AWS CloudFormation. So there's an AWS CloudFormation template, and it's essentially a GUI that you use in CloudFormation to walk through and select which services you want to send data to Sumo Logic. And it's going to ingest the CloudWatch and CloudTrail data. So for CloudWatch, it's logs and metrics. CloudTrail will be the CloudTrail logs that it'll be pulling. And then as that data gets ingested into Sumo Logic, the enrichment of the data, so to tag it with the account, region, and namespace and entity, actually happens, whoops, advanced too fast. It happens on the Sumo Logic side. And this is what we use to build out that Explore tab experience, as well as enable you to pivot from logs to metrics easily. So right now, the services that are supported for AWS Observability out of the box are EC2, RDS, ELB, Lambda, DynamoDB, and API Gateway. We do, of course, have the ability to monitor any of the services that are available with AWS. These are just the ones that are included with the CloudFormation template currently. And we're working constantly to add more and more services to the setup flow. But you can add other services. We have docs that can walk you through that. So if that's of interest to you, definitely reach out to our support team and they can help you through that process or point you to the docs. Let me see if there were other questions. How well does Sumo Logic work for data recovery? Was another question. So we have standardized times that we save data, timeframes, and so it's based on your license, and that can be modified by your license. So I don't know if I answered your question fully, but we also have real-time data as well as infrequent use data. We have a bunch of different data tiers depending on how you're actually using that data. And so all of that depends on the different license that you're currently using. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay, I wanted to talk about, with my 5 minutes left here, a couple different customer use cases, and then I'll quickly get to if there are other questions I'd be happy to go through or jump back into the dashboard. But some of our customers who are using this solution currently, Snoop is a case where almost their entire environment is in AWS and built on serverless. So one of the things that has been very useful for them is the ability to see real-time all of the dependencies that are happening in their environment, and specifically latency. They found it's a lot easier to see things like that when their environment is 100% serverless. They've been able to really see a reduction in alert noise by using some of these tools, and of course, consolidated views across all of these services. We also use this internally, and our search team, which has pretty serious demand of load on them, they were actually able to reduce their MTTR by 5x, which is pretty incredible. And then another financial service, Zest Money, also uses this solution in their AWS environment. And they also use it primarily for reduction of alert noise, but also for consolidation of views and helping them more easily connect the dots between services. So if you want to get started, we actually have a pretty incredible 90-day promo going on currently. This is for ingestion of logs, metrics, and traces. And you can get started with that at sumologic.com. I mentioned some docs. We have very extensive docs. If you have any questions or need help setting this up, at help.sumologic.com. And of course, you can always contact sales at sales@sumologic.com. Okay, and I'm just going to check if there are any more questions. Another question is the Root Cause Explorer part of AWS Observability? Yes, it's an extension of AWS Observability. So they use the same data. AWS Observability ingests those logs and metrics data, and Root Cause Explorer tracks the metrics specifically in order to identify anomalies. It uses machine learning as well as some rules that have been codified by industry experts very familiar with the tools that we're using or with the services that are included in order to help cut down on the alert noise even more. Okay. And I think those are all the questions that we had right now. I wanted to thank you all for joining. And hopefully you can attend another Sumo Logic webinar. Hopefully we answered all of your questions about AWS. And I look forward to seeing you next time.